A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
The first humans of Asia. Low-built houses, drowning in greenery, streets with gaily murmuring irrigation ditches, and a young man in camping clothes in a hurry to get to the house. Familiar to all travelers, his native home. He imagined how he would tell this incredible story to his father and hurried even more. Zaysan, the summer of 1907. During my trip to the glaciers of Muztagh, the hunter who accompanied me told me about a wild man, Jibek. He heard about the existence of such a creature from Kazakhs who visited Jungaria. To my questions, he could only say that the wild man allegedly can be seen far to the south. He could not give any details, but he promised to find out about this creature when he was able to. Reports and materials by Professor Kaklov. Yes, he's still a student, but has been interested in science since childhood. And of course, he knows the Darwin's theory very well. And here, at least, there is a new kind of person. And, in the name of the discovery, it was born by itself, Primo Homo Asiaticus, the first human of Asia. Kaklov was the first to raise the issue of studying the snowman, which later became known as a Yeti, called him the Wild Man. He almost managed to find the answer. The snowman was almost in his hands. And he almost made the greatest discovery. Well, if history does not have a subjunctive mood, then this story is just a beginning. Kaklov was a very scrupulous person, so I believe that he really reached the very essence of the matter. Scientists who wandered around Zaysan and from Zaysan to Xinjiang across this territory heard legends about a snowman or Yeti or Amistal. They were all called by different names. Here he stands nearby in the bushes, and we know that he's standing there. Well, even if you shout, he doesn't even scream. Chapter 1. Traces of a Wild Man. Moscow, 1958. The historian Porshnev talks with the ornithologist Kaklov. Kaklov is already retired, but the Zaysan events are emerging as if they occurred yesterday, and they'll still bring pain. Why did the discovery not happen? In a hurry, he extracts from the deep memory of the scraps of half-buried treasure. Alas, the main field diaries of those years have disappeared. Kaklov, with inquisitiveness, collected information from the Kazakh population. They were quite naturalistic. The zoologist came up with cunning control questions. From Boris Porshnev, Fight for Troglodytes. The city where it all began, Zaysan and the lovely house. Father, the mayor, a member of the Geographic Society, an interpreter from the Kyrgyz-Kazakh language. The brothers are a geographer, a microbiologist, an artist. In the large Kaklov family, love and only love for science ruled. The Kaklovs in general very hospitable. This dishware belonged to them. Here they probably poured soup, and here they entertained their guests. They entertained all the celebrities, Brem, Humboldt, Przhevalsky, Potanin, and many other eminent scientists. All the famous travelers, for example, Brem, stayed at the Kaklov's house in the city of Zaysan, and incidentally, here's a photograph from the beginning of the 20th century. Tell me, please, do you have any materials related to the search for the snowman written by Kaklov? No, we don't have these materials because they're mostly in people's memories. Kaklov himself later wrote that the question was not new. He'd heard of the wild man, and Kozlov, Grum Grzmi Milo, and Przhevalsky were told about the wild beast back in 1872. He was either offered the skin of a snowman or, so maybe a scarecrow, but he did not see either one. There were only stories. In recent decades, in the Karagai district of East Kazakhstan, somehow it's become quiet. But we're frightened by the albast in our childhood. This is a Kazakh word for the Yeti. The albasti will come to take you away. Since people talked about them, it means they were there.
Раз люди говорили албасты, значит, были они.
Chapter 2, a portrait of a Yeti. A fascinating story in historical detail. A set of taxidermist outlines, field notes, and photos, the Karklov collection of the Regional Museum of Ust-Kamenogorsk. We have a few photos in the museum's repository where the members of the zoological expedition organized by Vitaly Karklov have been captured. Here's another photo. These are members of the zoological expedition of Karklov. It was in this expedition that he had again heard of the wild man. The information came from the Kazakhs who lived on the very border with China. At that time, of course, he was not called either the snowman or the Yeti. The fact that this is not a mythical creature was assured by the locals with all seriousness. He just found a man who could say something about it. Then he would contact a person who told this story to the previous man and then to the next person and so on. And you could find out. Through this chain, he reached the first sources. They did not know each other, lived at a distance of at least 250 kilometers apart, but described the strange creature in a strikingly similar way. Two messages from two different eyewitnesses. The people who personally saw these creatures and held them in their hands or caught them, there were several cases like this. One of the witnesses grazed horses in the mountains. One day at dawn, he and other herdsmen noticed a strange man who was making his way to the horses. They decided that he was a horse thief. The stranger was easily caught. He was very clumsy. And they were surprised at his sight. Naked, hairy, he couldn't speak. Just shouted like a hare, the witness told Karklov. Tabunchik said that this is a wild man, an innocent creature who does no harm to people and should be let go. Having examined this unusual creature very well, they let him go and began to watch where he would go. They managed to find a place where he disappeared. From reports and materials by Professor Karklov. Other evidence is even more interesting. The eyewitnesses watched the creature for almost a month. Every day, they examined an individual caught and chained by the mill. Back in 1907, the Kazakhs caught a snowman, but it was a woman, a female snowman. They told Karklov that the story of the woman, say a female of a relict human, was allegedly caught and she was all covered with wool. And interestingly, she slept in the camel's position, leaning elbows and knees on the ground, and her forehead rested as well on the ground. That's how she slept.
Локтями и коленками о землю, а лбом упиралась также о землю. Вот таким образом спала.
He interrogated the witnesses separately, showing them images of the anthropoid. Being an excellent artist, Karklov even took advantage of one of the methods of criminalistics. He made a verbal portrait. Everyone who has seen these people from different angles, different people completely without education and so on, didn't make any sense to lie. They had no reason to lie. They all drew the same foot of this man, very wide, short, like an elephant's leg, and very large. Long arms, massive forehead, brows instead of a forehead, almost no chin, hairline resembling the hair of a young camel were also mentioned. Sigiyik, or Maimo, is how eyewitnesses called the wild anthropoid. What was it that Karklov discovered? The former travelers to Central Asia only referred to the stories of local residents. He also achieved an anatomical and biological description of these creatures. Karklov translated the testimony of Kazakhs into the language of comparative anatomy with the help of a special technique. Just like water becoming smooth and the bottom came out. Boris Poshnov, Fight for Troglodytes. Chapter 3, The Hunt for a Troglodyte. His drawings made, according to eyewitnesses, a thorough description of the appearance and habits of antediluvians and is not yet solid proof. Vitaly Karklov decided to catch the creature, which was very difficult, and deliver it to Zaysan, which was even more difficult. He asked the locals to catch the creature for him if possible. The first eyewitnesses and my constant travel companion and hunter agreed to do this, arguing that for the trip it would take at least a year, counting from the date of departure, from reports and materials by Professor Karklov. All the time he collected money and donations to find the snowman. The search area is more than 1,000 kilometers of uninhabited territory. We need an entire expedition to bring the wild man back alive. Different conditions can cause trouble. He wrote that we cannot catch this wild animal or human, as it is unreal, but we can bring some parts of his body. Karklov consulted with the county governor, and he recommended avoiding going on a private expedition in any case. It was necessary to secure a specific paper from the Academy of Sciences that then Karklov should not be accused of murder should something happen, and he worked in this direction. It should be mentioned that in 1904, as a teenager, Karklov became acquainted with the zoologist Peter Sushkin. The academicians strongly supported the young scientist, and they wrote to each other. 5 years later, already at the Moscow University, Karklov began to work under his direct supervision. And naturally, all of his considerations the student described to the scientific leader. He wrote a letter to Peter Sushkin first. He approvingly approached it, although other scientists were skeptical about it. With Sushkin's permission, Karklov prepared a preliminary communication and a request for help. Then he wrote a note to the Academy of Sciences of Russia. In late 1913 and early 1914, I sent an application to the Academy of Sciences with a request to give permission to bring this mysterious creature from Central Asia. In this statement, without giving a description of the wild man, in the impulse of youth, I used the expression primi homo asiaticus, as one might call this person, from reports and materials by Professor Karklov. Months of agonizing expectations were coming, but the answer did not come. He decided to apply to the Geographical Society, but all plans were changed by the First World War. Karklov returned to the university and to Moscow, and in this turbulent time, an incredible thing happened. A wild man was caught alive. Only now it happened in 1917, and Karklov could not go. It was the time of the revolution. He could not come and visit, and local Kazakhs had to release the snowman again. Epilogue: The Missing Link. Among the projects of the flight to the moon and other fantastic ideas at the time, this lay under covers for almost half a century. At that time, they reacted coolly to this piece of paper and wrote a resolution and placed it in the repository of little significance for science, where messages and so on were kept. And this paper was kept there until 1959. Even a little earlier, Professor Poshnov tackled this issue, found the note of Karklov in the Academy of Sciences. The same Professor Porshnev put forward an unexpected hypothesis, and we quote him: "Another species of human, albeit far from normal man, survived to this day, similar to the Neanderthals, and so reminiscent to the Eastern Kazakh creature." Karklov sends his materials to the journal, but they are returned because of their unscientific nature. He's sitting in front of me, a deserved scholar who's retired, grey-haired, agitated. For half a century, as if he was still a student, he truly discovered America and suffered an inexplicable defeat. For 45 years, I tried to forget and did not open the wound again. Boris Porshnev, Fight for Troglodytes. It's just bad luck. Until the end of his days, and there's been a lot of those days, he hoped that his materials about the wild man will become the property of world science. And it seems this story can indeed have a continuation, changing the theory of evolution. Kaklov even guessed the name of the creature, the first human being of Asia.